Hello everyone. We are live. Sorry for the delay. As I said on Twitter, Izzy is not feeling well this week, so she's been home from daycare, and we're just kind of trading off watching her, but she is attempting to take a quick nap. So we're going to squeeze in a live stream and hopefully finish up this final piece for this additions package, because I feel like I actually, as I mentioned in the last stream, I've gone ahead and tagged everything, and honestly, I'm using this in my applications already, so it's very functional and good to go. So the final thing really is just kind of going down to this to-do is this fallback for policies, which we did work on in, I think, not this series, but again, kind of what sparked this series was that I was making some things that I thought would be useful inside of the framework itself. I did submit PRs for a lot of these things, and unfortunately they were closed. So I think they have value. I already use such things in my applications myself, so why not bring them in, right? So the last thing I think that is useful is this fallback for policies, and I was checking the branches, and we do have a branch for this. So let's do git checkout policy fallback, and let's do a git rebase against master, and we're just back to whip. So let me bring up PHP Storm, but if memory serves, I think the issue here wasn't so much the implementation. It was making some decisions around how this kind of ends up working. And we were getting a little theoretical. Like, I know how I want this to work, but we were getting a little bit theoretical in the sense that, like, it was hard to see it without a test. And now that I've written some other features, other additions to this package, I do actually have some decent test cases in here, and some stuff where we can make, we can go ahead and make like a policy and wire this up. And I think that's gonna make it easier to kind of see how this is working, right? So if we go back, I think we have a trait. The goal here is to add a trait, and I think it was something like with fallback is what it was. I'm surprised, what's in head? Oh, we do have a fallback. Source traits. Where did I go? Oh no, it just, PHP Storm was just being super slow. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at this with fallback trait. I like this, with fallback. Okay, so the goal here, yeah, we had a lot of stuff here, right? And we don't really know what we want to do, and we don't really understand exactly what's being passed in. And this is kind of why this particular thing is better if it were actually merged into core, because if it were, then I don't have to like make decisions about the arguments. I would have full access to the arguments passed into the original gate authorize method. So again, I think we'll see what I mean by that once we drive out a test and we start seeing this dump fire. So let's just do that, right? Let's do that. So let's get back over here. Let's go down to post, and we'll go ahead and tack on here with fallback. Okay, so now this is, or no, sorry, it's not this. It's the policy that needs it. Sorry, it's the policy that needs it. Okay, let me get that out of here. I think I'm using Orchestra Test Bench. So we're getting kind of a 2-for-1 special in this stream. The 2-for-1 is the fact that I know I've been deferring demoing writing tests because I kind of wanted to get a feel for how that worked. And I have a feel for it now. So we're gonna not only hopefully finish this trait, but I'll also demonstrate how I've been testing this package with Orchestra Test Bench. Orchestral, sorry. No, wait, it's Orchestra. Their package is called Orchestra, but the organization is Orchestral. Anyway, documentation. Where's documentation? Documentation is a little bit light, but if we get into the workbench, we can see, I think the workbench has like all, not the serve command, maybe it's in test bench. I think they have a little command where you can run the same artisan commands to kind of build out things inside of this skeleton. I forget what they call it though. There's a lot of terminology. Workbench install. I thought there's something, I think you can just do PHP workbench. I think you can just do PHP workbench, not that. What is this called? Test bench. It's test bench. I think they have like an app make stuff. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there it is. So you can use test bench to run effectively artisan commands that will build classes, much like artisan make does inside of your Laravel application. But since this isn't a Laravel application, it puts it in this little workbench folder structure, which mirrors a Laravel application. And this is what gets loaded by test bench when it runs. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do make policy. And I think this, again, just defers down into that. And then we can say, we'll do make policy. Let's just call this post policy for something simple. And then the model will be post. Model equals post. I think this will work. Maybe. Okay. So again, it's effectively just an artisan command, but inside of our workbench folder, it makes the Laravel app structure of files that we need. So if we look at post policy, again, this will generate everything, you know, that a posted model would generate. Okay, this is good. Here's where we can start talking though, right? Because all of these things match up with like the resourceful methods in a controller, right? So that's kind of the point. When you come in here and you actually make one of these that corresponds to your model, I would say 90% of the time, you know, these are all true. And then when you get down in here to update, they're all something like user ID is equal, you know, to post user ID. And that's what all the rest of these are gonna say, right? Even maybe some of these upper ones say the same thing. And I think that's where the beauty of this fallback method comes into place. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna delete these for now. Because I wanna start writing tests. So I'm gonna delete these for now. And then what we're gonna need to do is also make a controller a resourceful controller that uses this policy. So let's generate the same thing. We'll say make controller -r, and we'll say post controller. And I think, can you say like -m post? I don't know. Okay, so again, this gets made inside here. Okay, it didn't, oh no, it did, okay, good. It did wire up post. Okay, nice. That's what I wanted it to do, awesome. And then it brings in workbench post. Okay, cool. So in here, all I wanna do now is write the same gate authorization calls that you would, that match up with, again, the resourceful defaults. So what I wanna do is here, we'll say gate, we'll bring in the facade, we'll say authorize, and then I think what you do here is you say post class. This is all you do here for this to kind of work, I think. Or do you say post, do you say index or view? I always forget. Let's go look at the docs. Laravel.com, authorization, let's say generating policies, authorizing via the gate facade. Oh no, you do pass in update. It's not automatic. So create. Okay, all right, fine. So here we'll say ability is view any, I think. It's a little bit gross. Let's see if it's on this page. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is view any, I think, and then this becomes create, and this becomes store. Is it? Or is it create? I don't know. We're going to find out. This is view, I think. And then you also need to pass in, you don't pass in the class anymore. Now you pass in post. All right. And then same thing here. You've got edit and update. And then finally destroy. Or is it delete? Ah, I should have left that. I should have left the generated code. Let's go back to the policy and get the code. Okay, so we have view any, view create, update. I guess create and store are the same thing, and so is update, and then it's delete, not destroy. Man, I tell you, the more I look at these things, I do not like them. Okay, I really don't use policies that much, but again, when I do, that's kind of the point. Like I'm so over like having to drill out each one of these methods. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Okay, I think these are wired up to be the way we want. Now again, for now, I'm just gonna leave this for now, I think. And let's just say false. Okay, and let's go write a test. So let's say PHP artisan make test. This'll be our, what's kind of the convention here? We're just throwing them underneath the traits. So it mirrors the folder structure. So I would say traits with fallback test.php. All right, so hopefully that throws it in here, I think. Oh, it's not artisan, sorry. It's, no, wait. Oh, I don't have make test. I don't have make test. Okay, that's fine. Let's just copy this with fallback test. All right. And then we'll need the database because we're gonna have to make some stuff. So here's what I want to do. Let's just get rid of all this crap. And let's just make a new quick test case. There you are. And we'll say something like it returns. For now, we're just going to say 403 because we're really just kind of playing around with this for now. So let's play around with this. What I want to do, I think we're also going to have to wire this up in the routes file. Routes web. Let's say route resource posts post controller class. That should be good enough. Okay. So we should be able to say this get route posts index, and we haven't said if we need to be authorized or not yet. So here's, I think in the base case, response equals, I feel like in the base case, we basically want to just say this, assert, what do we say here? Assert forbidden? Or we can't do that. Wait, do we have? I thought we had Laravel's testing layer. Makes HTTP request. Whose is this? Yeah. Why is... Oh, sorry. I'm on this. Response assert forbidden. Yes. There we go. That's what we should get. Right now, that's what should happen. Okay? So if we do vendor bin PHP unit, let's get this up top. Vendor bin PHP unit. Copy that. This passes. Great. Okay. So what I want to do now is let's go into post policy and let's say true. I'm not sure if this, honestly, I'm not sure if this passes or fails because we're technically not authenticated, but it might not matter. It still passes. Okay. No, wait, we're still 403 because we're not authenticated, I think. We're saying we have to be authenticated. I think if I were to do something like this, yeah, then we get a 200. Yeah. Okay, so see, these are all the nuances that I'm gonna have to think about with fallback, right? We could pass in an empty user. You're gonna have to know what to do there. So there's a lot of nuance with policies too. So for now we're saying true. So just for the purposes of this specific test, let's go ahead and authorize ourselves in the test case. Just to kind of like, again, we're after the 90%. We're after the majority use case here. So the majority use case is, let's go ahead and make a user. So we'll say user factory create, and we need to bring in that user. There they are. I'm pretty sure we have a factory for them. And then we're going to say acting as user. Okay, we should still get, no, we should no longer get, we don't have the user factory. Of course we don't. Okay, let's go get one. Database, factories, yeah we do. We've got a user factory right there. What's going on here? Database factories, models, user factory, not found. I think you have to wire this up yourself in Orchestra. Has factory. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you got to wire it up. It's not following the Laravel convention, so you're not getting it for free, right? So you have to kind of wire this up yourself. They should probably generate the code this way, in my opinion, but whatever. Okay, good. Failed to serving that 200 is 403. Good. And that's actually what we want on the test. So let's slow down and start to get this right. So let's say it returns a 200 for index. We'll just say index returns a 200. Index returns 200. Okay, cool. Run this, 403, got a 200. How did I break something? Acting as user, we got post index. Oh, sorry, this should be assert. Okay. Good. Okay, this is a proper test. We are an authenticated user, and right now our policy is returning true. We're just kind of proving out how this works. Okay, so what I want to do now, let's just prove it with one or two of these. I'm not going to try to build all of them on the stream. I think once we have a couple, again, it's up to the user to do the fallback stuff. But what I want to do is I want to remove this method, and based on my understanding of the Laravel authorization layer, because this method no longer exists, it's automatically going to throw a 403, possibly a 500. So let's run this again. Yeah, you're automatically, it couldn't find the ability that you were talking about, so it's assumed its default is you're not allowed to see that stuff. So here's where the trait comes in. Now I want to say use with fallback. All right. And then if I run this again, I would potentially expect an exception to be thrown, because our little trait says if you're using the trait but you don't have the fallback method, then throw an exception. There we go. You must define a fallback method when using the with fallback trait. Cool. That is the expected behavior. So you know what? Let's write a test for that. So let's do something like this. We can say something really easy by saying, we can do a few things here. I really want to drive this. Let's drive this for fun. Let's just write like 3 or 4 test cases real quick that I think will really kind of start to drive this out. So let's write another test case that says it uses the trait. All right, here we go. It uses the trait. All right, so what I want to do is I want to say, we can either use reflection, or I think we can just say class uses, and we'll say policy, post policy. So again, this is getting a little bit deep, but if we really want to kind of try to prove, okay, this thing uses the policy thing, right? This thing uses our trait. Okay, now we called something that we know doesn't exist. It throws an exception. Okay, we've handled kind of like the ancillary stuff about this, right? So let's do that. Let's do this, and we'll say this assert true, because the class should use that. So let's run this test again. Okay, we got a failure. Maybe you can't pass a class. It uses the trait. Failed asserting that array trait additions traits with fallback. Wait a second, what? Failed asserting that array. Oh, you get an array back. Sorry. I read it as like uses the class, not give me all the things. Okay, sorry. Let's bring off traits equals that, and then we can say something like assert contains. Yeah, contains with fallback class in traits. We could collapse this, but let's just make sure it works. There we go. We got one pass. Now we're back to the other failure. Okay, great. And yeah, let's just go ahead and collapse that. There's no reason to have both of those. Okay, so just a quick little way to kind of like drive out that our thing's using the thing that we want. That kind of proves like, okay, you're using this thing and you don't have these other methods defined. So now we're gonna, play on this behavior. Again, that's not needed. I'm kind of just like flexing a little bit of like my TDD muscles here as we're, trying to drive this out all the way. So now we can say something like, what we would need then is we would need to kind of say another trait doesn't have the fallback method, and so it explodes, right? That's kind of what we would need to say. So I would need another trait to kind of test this piece. So I'm just going to say something like it throws an exception. It throws exception when fallback method is missing. And again, there were some comments before of like, should we even throw an exception or should it just play on like Laravel? I don't know. I feel like if you're using I feel like I wanted to throw an exception. If you said with fallback and you didn't define a fallback method, you're not getting into the behavior. So I don't want anything like magical to be happening on your behalf. It should throw an error, in my opinion. That's where I stand on it. Okay, so we got this other to do. It's going to be a risky test, no problem. We'll do that because I'm going to have to make another policy and another controller to kind of get that to wire up because I'm going to go put a fallback method here. So let's do public function fallback. And what we need to do is fallback methods there. And this is probably going to return bool, right? Or kind of optionally bool. It could return null if you wanted to play on. That's kind of its signature, right? So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to return null. And null it doesn't mean anything. Null is kind of like defer. It's not that null doesn't mean anything. We know that null doesn't mean anything. In the context of a policy, null means like defer to the next thing, defer to like before or after filters. So right now I'm just going to return null, which should get us back to a place where it's returning 403. What I want to see though, here's the part that I wanted to get to in the beginning of the stream. What I want to see is I want to start seeing some dumps of what is actually being passed into this thing. That's what kind of starts to matter now. Okay, there was a dump up there. Let's go check it out. Okay. So workbench app models user. Okay, so the first thing we get is the user. That makes sense. All right. So status code 200, but got 500. Okay. Undefined variable user with fallback 226. Okay, good. We're getting a failure now. So let's go check it out. 26. Yeah. Okay. So what kind of has to happen here, let's just splat the arguments and see what happens. Okay, good. Expected 200, but got 403. So just to get this test back to passing, real fast, what you could do, instead of returning null, we should be able to return true here. And now that becomes the default. You can think of it like our policy is now open by default. Instead of closed by default, it's open by default because of this fallback method. You would never want to do this, but in the purpose of getting the test to be green here, hopefully, that's what I think will work. And there you go. It's yellow because of our risky test, but we're green. So what's being passed in? What's being passed into this now matters. So what I want to do is now I want to dump func get args. What do we actually get? We get view any. We get view any, and then we get the user. We get the authenticated user. So theoretically, the order here should be something like this, and then arguments. This is what I think it should be. Arguments. There we go. That's what I think we should be getting. Okay, yeah, it's not going to pass those in. So right now we can't write it this way. But at a minimum, it should do this. It should handle that. Cool. Okay. So let's write this same test for a more complicated policy method, right? Let's do it for like update, because it actually gets this stuff, right? So I'm going to delete update. So it should fire our thing. Let's go back to our test. And let's see what we get, right? We'll say update returns 200. So here we'll hit update, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to pass it post, which we need to make. So let's make a post. All right. And what does our post factory look like? Post factory. Okay, right now we're not even like binding these two things together. So I'm probably going to have to update the test suite to do that. But for now, for the purpose of our test, it kind of doesn't matter. What we should see now, update returns 200. Good, it doesn't return anything. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Where's our actual policy? We're dumping args. Okay, so did we get here? We got to view any? Oh, that's back in our policy itself. Okay, we didn't actually get to update. That's interesting. Let's just isolate update. Why didn't we get to update? Why didn't we get any dumps? Did I not kill that method? I killed update. Where is our controller? Did we not call it update? We did call it update. Oh, yeah. Is that got 403? Wait a second. That is, let's call edit. I think my problem, I don't think I can call get here. I think I would have to call like put. Maybe that's part of it. There we go. Yeah, I wasn't calling the correct method. I would have expected a 405 there. I thought Laravel throws 405, not 403. That's interesting. I would have expected the method to be wrong, but maybe there was some nuance there. Okay, what did we actually get passed in? We got update. Okay, we got update, we got the user, and then we got the actual post. So again, all this is lining up the way we would expect. All this lines up the way we would expect. Here's where let me demonstrate where problems start to arise and why this particular addition is taking me a little bit to finish. It's taking more thought than you would think. And again, why it would be easier if it were in core. What call actually gets is kind of unknown at this layer of our application. Now, again, if you were down within Laravel and you would know that you were calling a magic method or not, and you could build up those parameters. So let me do this. Let me just make a one-off method, okay, and just kind of demonstrate this. So let's just say we have some kind of custom method that gets post, right? And we want to authorize this like custom ability, right? And we're going to pass it in post, but we're also going to pass it in additional arguments. So we'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? This is the way you would pass in additional arguments. That's my understanding anyway, right? So there's a couple things, even just in this. So let me make the web route so we can get all that working. So let's do this. We'll do this down. We'll do something like post custom, and we'll say post controller custom, and we'll call this name post custom. And I did not make that an array. That's got to be a tuple. All right, there we go. That should fix that, I believe. What's wrong with you? Oh, sorry, not resource. Let's just get it. That's fine. Okay, there we go. All right, if we go back to our test and we get this and we say custom returns 200, and we'll say post custom. Okay, everything should be set up here where we theoretically should get, a passing test, right? It should hit our fallback, and we will get a passing test, I believe. Nope, we get a failure. Expect status code, but received 404. Okay, why did we get a 404? Post custom, did I not call it the right thing? Post custom, gate authorized custom ability. Why'd you get a 404? Who's throwing the 404? Is it the web layer or here? No, it's the web layer. Vendor bin test bench route list. Post custom posts.custom. Oh crap. It's the same. I think it's the same problem as I had just a minute ago. Get. There we go. Nope, wrong thing. Nope, still 404. Get route post custom. Why are we 404ing? Why are we 404ing? I put it in post controller. It's public. We're not getting here. Why are we not getting here? Let's just take this out for giggles. We're not even getting there. Okay. We just saw the route, I thought, anyway. Get post custom post.custom. Should call that. According to PHP Storm, it's wired up correctly. What's wrong with you? Why don't you get in here? Why aren't you working? Oh. Yes. I need to have a place. Yes. Okay. Sorry. It's been a while since I've written a custom web route. I need to have a post here. There we go. Yeah, it needs to look like show, right? There we go. Okay. Whew. Back to it. All right. See, I'm not streaming at my normal time. Everything's thrown off. Been daddy daycare for 3 days. I don't even know how to code anymore. Okay. Here's a couple things. First, I've mentioned this before. This is not custom dash ability. It's now camel cased custom ability, because that's the underlying method Laravel was looking for when it got called. So again, because we're not hooking in at the framework layer, there's already kind of number one issue is like, you can use with fallback, but here are its caveats, okay? Now user comes across, I think user comes across and then we've got an array now. No, 2 is post models. So arguments get splatted out, and then 3 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our arguments are getting, stretched out. Here's where it starts to get a little more tricky. Where it starts to get a little bit more tricky is that I don't think we'd ever be in a place where we could use this trying to figure out how to say this the right way. When we first started messing around with this, you could put a question mark on the user and it would be a guest, like a guest ability. I think the documentation talks about this. If we scroll back up, there's like guest users, yeah. And you do that by type hinting. Well, there is no method. You can't type hint. So what we're saying is that you're pretty much always going to have a user, right? And that's fine. That's fine. If you want to do this kind of guest stuff, you need to define the thing. I don't think it takes away from the feature, from the addition that we're building. Again, it's just a kind of a notation that when you use this, here is kind of how it works. Now, again, if it were at the framework layer, we could account for this, but we're not at the framework layer. So resourceful methods with user and model. We've proven that comes across. Resourceful methods without user, it doesn't have anything there. With additional arguments, we see that they're chained on non-resourceful methods with additional arguments. We just saw that was chained on as well. So, what's basically the arguments we get is basically the order is effectively user, and then the model, right? And then additional args. Okay, now user always there, just part of the trait. That's just a requirement of using it. Model question mark may not be there. Can check. We could do a check here. We can check if this element, this argument, is instance of model, right? If it's an instance of model, then we know that we would pass it in. What I'm trying to get to is here. I'm trying to get to user, and then I'm trying to get to model. I'm trying to get back to here, so this is what gets passed down to fallback, so the signatures can match. Once the signatures match, we have a spec now for the developer to use and follow, and then they can write whatever logic. Whatever logic they put in here is inconsequential to me. I only care that it's being called. That's all I'm trying to test for, is that it's being called. I'm not trying to test gate policies necessarily. I'm just testing that it's called. So, I'm still building it to where we need to be able to call it with these things. So we've determined that user's always there. That's just a requirement. So not just part of trait, requirement, right? You're just required that if you're using fallback, you're authorized by a user or something. You have this argument. Now, model may not be there. That's okay. What we can do is we can test that the model is an instance of the model, and we could probably go so far as to kind of look at its name, because I mean, theoretically, you could pass, comment here, for example. Another model is my point. So we can't just say instance of model. We have to kind of say it's an instance, of the class that we're authorizing against, right? So like the point is post and post match up, right? Now, I think by definition that we're getting in here, again, I think we can leverage being a little lower, a little farther down in the call stack. I think we know that if with fallback, if this method's being called, it's already being called inside of our trait. So if model's there, it's already found us, is the point. So I don't think this check has to be super, super strong. I think we could trust that if the model's there, if that argument's a model, then that is the model, right? That's the model we want to mess with. And then anything else is just additional arguments, right? So arguments equals anything left over, right? And we would just always kind of pass that in as an empty array. So we're not going to splat it or anything. We're just going to empty array that. So here's kind of really the final rub. This is the final rub. We really just need to make sure that the model gets pulled off correctly. Now again, for simple things, the model's not going to be there, right? What I'm thinking about is what we have to do. Let me just write this one to show us. What we have to do is let's go back to index, right? Let's go back to this index. And let me just pass in, let me just demonstrate another thing here. So what about this, right? Let's just go back to this test. We got all of our dumps. Let's say index returns 200. What I want to see here is this doesn't have a model. So what does our array of arguments look like? Okay, now again, this is going to explode because we're not actually passing in user, but the point here is that there is no model. So our next thing after user is an argument, right? So the tricky thing is like, again, we don't know. We kind of don't know. We would know that that's not an instance of model. But again, what if you passed in, you know, what if this was like comment, right? Like, what if it was a model, just not the model we cared about? So I'm gonna think on that. I think there's a little bit of nuance here. Once you kind of can say, okay, if the second argument, or the second element, if the second element in this array is an instance of a model and its model name matches like the prefix of this model, right, or whatever, we could look to see what Laravel does, right? That's what Laravel does. So we could check those two things and pluck it out, right? Laravel's already kind of pre-doing that for us. We kind of just need to do the rest ourselves. We could also get like super crazy and basically just say like, you know, if you're view any or if you're, you know, create, then, you know, you wouldn't have a model, right? Model's always just going to be empty. So there are some conventions here that we could follow to make this work. But I kind of need to think those out. Once I think those out, I think this is done, right? We've seen how we've written the test. We've gotten close enough to what we need to do, right? So this is good. I think it has custom abilities. It has additional things that we're passing in. It's a good demonstration here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just put that back in there. It doesn't matter. So I think for the purposes of testing, like everything I need is here in the test. We see that our test is running and, you know, it's working as far as the test goes. The test case is actually testing things. Now it's kind of just a matter to go back and get these filled in, right? So, you know, user is effectively all, we could fill in a few of these. We know users is always here. So we can say array pop, or no, array unshift. So we're going to pop that first element off the array of arguments. We're going to go so far as to say name is equal to str snake or dash slug. Is it slug or dash? Slug. Slug? Would we slugify it? Let's see what slug does. So we're automatically going to slugify the name. I think that just makes it normalized. It's a little I think it's more easily predictable than it is to like say, oh, well, it's camel case. What if your thing was already camel case? Or what if it was already dasherized? Like, I don't know. I think that's weird. Let's go back. Let's go back and see custom. What does custom do? So I'm not gonna dump these anymore. And here we're just gonna say model equals null and arguments or whatever arguments are left over, which might not be any. There we go. Okay, cool. And then what did we get in here name-wise? Okay, we didn't get the dash. Maybe you have to snake it and then slug it. Or no, I know what you need to do. You need to snake and then change its delimiter to dash. I think this will do what we want. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah. Okay, so this is actually now getting into our method. We're getting custom ability. We're getting 3. 3. Why are we getting 3? Does unshift not do what I thought it did? Oh, prepinned. So that is unshift. Shift an element off the top of the first array. Shift. I should have known that. Come on. Here we go. Okay. So, yes, this feels a little better. Okay, custom ability, then user, then null, then our additional arguments, which in this case is the post, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. That. Oh, because we haven't made any logic to pop the model off yet. So this is where it's a little bit. This is the last piece. Really, what should have happened here is this should have also been shifted off the arguments array and put in there for model. So I'm just going to dive into core off stream, figure out what kind of a logic they have to make sure that these match each other, and then once I do, it might just be a prefix match or something of that nature. Like once I do, then we're done. Like that's it, right? So yeah, I think that's what's left, right? So I think all those can go away. I think it's really just like, now it's just like to do on model. Determine if we array shift another element. All right. So basically, if model, then array shift another element, that would make everything line up. We're gonna end up getting another model off, and if not, so this can, this may end up being a ternary. This may just be a helper method that lives in here that's private. I'll probably just make a ternary. Is first element of arguments instance of X. Okay, pop it off. Otherwise, null. There you go. Then fallback gets everything. Then fallback gets everything we want it to get. It gets user, it gets model, and it gets arguments equals array. Which again, you don't really have to do, but that's the signatures will now match up, and then now developer can do whatever with those arguments to streamline policy, right? Cool. And then what we'll do is we'll leave like public function explicit ability, right? And we'll say bool return false. This is just another test I'm thinking of here where we're basically saying like, hey, if you're using fallback but you actually have an explicit ability method that you're checking, do the thing, right? We could just say true, I guess. All right, cool. So that way we can just make sure like this happens. I could even throw something here to confirm that it's actually being sent through, right? So, yeah, so here's our fallback. So once I have model, then I think it's good to go. Cool. Whew. This is a big one, but again, as we can see on screen here, like the ability to kind of write your policies more streamlined like this, to where you just have this fallback method, I think has a lot of value, right? Like a lot of your logic again is just saying, does this model belong to this user? That's all it's ever saying. And you could very easily say, okay, if name is view any, create whatever, return true, right? And then the defaults just don't return anything. Let Laravel do its thing as it's always done. But defining those methods over and over and over and over and over again for like all the resourceful actions or all your abilities, like when most of your abilities is just the same logic. I mean, pop open any policy, I guarantee you, more than 50% of the code in there is copied. More than 50% of the methods contains the exact same logic. That's what I believe. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would much rather be in the habit of writing my policies this way. Here's your default. Here's kind of like your default thing. Just return true, be open by default or whatever. And then you define anything that needs like super explicit stuff, custom abilities or things that allow guests, as we saw, like a lot of stuff. But this is the goal. The goal is to be able to say with fallback, I define a fallback. That's kind of my default. And then I can do anything else super custom I need to in a method, or I can just write a couple lines of code here once instead of copying the same logic, the same return value several times. So I think that's pretty cool. Hopefully I'll have it done by next week. But this is the last stream. This is going to be the last stream for working on this package. I'll announce when this is done and tagged to 1.0. Very close. Like I said, everything out here, all this stuff here, it's fully tested. I'm using it in Laravel Shift right now. I'm using it on WP Static. This safe objects I actually just used the other day. It was wonderful. I loved it. I was already using find by methods inside Laravel Shift. I was able to drop this package in and remove my custom method, and everything still worked. My whole test suite still passed. It was pretty awesome. Haven't used the status helper yet, but again, that one was pretty easy and lightweight. So everything's documented up here in the README file if you want to check these out. Again, while this is only v0.3, it's not a 1.0 release. Like, these things are tested and I'm using them personally in production. So no reason not to go check out this package. But I will finish this last to-do off stream and tag 1.0. So thanks everybody for taking the journey with me. We'll start a fresh series of live streams next week.